Hey folks, it's Ron here at Gimpley's Garage. It's Sunday, February 16th. Figured I'd do one last install on the Ethel project. I had done some live feeds of this, and I noticed on all my live feeds our signal was so crappy out here. It was very, very pixelated. Kind of reminded me of movies from Japan or something. Not really sure what's up with that. But anyway, broke out the GoPro today to try to get a little better feed and publish this later on. So obviously there's the finished product, Ethel 05 Softail. Started out life as a twin cam 88B, then got up to a 95-inch kit, which is about as big as you can go without installing a crank on these things. Back in the day, S&S 570 cams, Psych Performance heads. So never been on a dyno because it's carbureted, so I tuned it myself, just seat of the pants. But if you look at this package historically, it's probably making close to 100 horsepower, 100 foot-pounds of torque, which pretty good for back in the day. Obviously now you can buy a factory 131, 121, etc., and they're all making a lot more power now. But for what this is, it's pretty stout, and it's also a relatively light bike compared to other Harleys. So anyway, that's where we are with that. I figured I would, I've been out here cleaning up today in my shop, and I figured I would just kind of walk through everything we had to do to replace the crank on this bike. So obviously here's the stock crankshaft, served good for 43,250 miles. That's what the bike has on it now. But essentially, as I've said before, you can see these splines right here, or rather the lack of splines, and that is what drove this major overhaul. This crank still had a run out of about 2.5 thou on the pinion side. I checked it while it was in the bike. I also checked it when I built the engine back in 2007, 2008, whenever it was, and it had 2.5 then. So the crank held up strong. The problem was the compensating sprocket, which attaches here, the bolt backed off and allowed the rotor to spin on the shaft. So you can see there's no splines in there. So basically that's what caused the problem. And then it got into the stator and ate that up as well. So that's the root cause. But I figured I would just go through everything we have here that we had to replace. So obviously had to split the cases to get the crank out. And then the first thing I replaced there was these two crank bearings. These are what the bearings are on a 2005 Softail. They're both the same bearing number. Harley calls one of them the lefty bearing now, but mine's got lefty bearings on both sides. They're the exact same thing. The only difference is you tighten down on this one. It's got an oil seal. This is on the primary side, and then this is on the pinion side going to the camshaft. So those got replaced. Also, when I was in the engine, this is a twin cam B, so I replaced these sliders here. That's on the balance chain. It's got counterbalancer, so I replaced that. And then obviously while it went back together, I got a new stator, new rotor. I said that backwards, new rotor, new stator. Bearings, like I mentioned, had a few bolts that were either rounded or stripped, so I replaced those. While I was in the primary, I went ahead and put a new primary chain slider on. You can see that's got 43,000 miles worth of wear, not bad. But while I was in there, I went ahead and did it. Also replaced these little collars that go on the primary bolts, the primary to engine bolts, to keep it from turning. It's a little lock tab. Other miscellaneous stuff going back on, had to put on a set of, had to pull the cylinders obviously to get the crank out. So these are cylinder gaskets go on, or cylinder O-rings that go on the bottom of the cylinders. These are the head gaskets that go on top, then the heads go on. Then this is the lower head gasket, or upper head gasket, I guess lower rocker box gasket would be the official name. Then these are the rocker box gaskets. Also got the two oil breather O-rings in there. From there we get into the cam side. This is the camshaft gasket. These are the the lifter gaskets that go on top of the lifter base. There's the O-rings for the push tubes. Also replaced, had the carb off, so I went ahead and replaced the intake seals and the manifold seal there for the carb to the intake. What else? Spark plugs, went ahead and changed them. Anytime I take them loose, I like to put new ones in. These aren't bad, but it's got the crush washer, and it's hard to get the right torque without the crush washer. I also put in a set of head gaskets here. And then finally this circuit breaker, which nothing was wrong with it, but when I was tightening it down, I was tightening down the positive cable and I accidentally stripped it out. So pretty good amount of work, as you can see. Took me several days to get this done. If I was just working it start to finish, I probably could have done it in a day and a half, if not sooner. But unfortunately, with a career and work involved, I have to kind of break off. Plus, waiting on parts, it's always hard to get parts out here. None of these things are ever in stock. The dealers always have chrome and, you know, maintenance items, but anything beyond that, you typically have to order it. So, I guess the summary on all this is, when you add it all up, the crank being the major expense, the new S&S crank, I think I paid around $1,700 for it. So that's kind of hard to justify on a bike that's probably not worth that much money, but it's very sentimental. So I wanted to get it back together. It's worth $0 in the condition it was in, not running. So obviously I fixed that. And, you know, you add up all these gaskets, all these bearings, all these everything else. I probably got, I'd have to do the math, but it's probably somewhere between $2,300 and $2,500 total. And of course, that's for my labor. So, you know, we don't believe in paying labor here at Gimply's Garage, so we never do that. The only thing that's ever been paid for labor-wise on any of these bikes in here is a dyno tune, because I don't own a dyno. And with fuel injection, I can't really tune that myself, and I don't believe in downloaded maps. You know, with a carburetor, I can figure that out by changing jets. So, you know, if it takes a screwdriver, I can tune it. If it takes a USB cable, I can't tune it. So that's kind of where we are with that. Anyway, just wanted to run this final, you know, installment of the crankshaft job. Very happy with it. Yesterday I got it all buttoned up. I only had time to run up and down the road for a couple of miles, and that was fun. I think the last thing I'm gonna have to do is get a new battery. My battery was kind of weak. It's been sitting for 2 years, even though it was on a tender. And the battery died when I was cranking it yesterday, because it took a minute to get fuel down to the carburetor, because, you know, you got to have vacuum for the petcock to release. Just over cranked it. So I'm probably going to order a new battery, but I think that's the last thing to do with this. And again, pretty happy with the results. Not sure if I'm going to, you know, trade this bike in or not. I'm going to just ride the shit out of it for now that it's back together. But the new Lowrider ST has really got my attention. And you know, this bike is 20 years old. It's a 2025 model, and I would love to do the same treatment on one of these modern Milwaukee 8s. So we'll see where that goes. But I think first I'm just going to enjoy this thing, because I put a lot of sweat equity into this bike. I've had this bike forever. Really cut my teeth on learning how to work on Harleys on this thing. So again, a lot of sentimental value. But anyway, that's it. I'm going to cut this off, and then I think I'm going to fire this thing up so you guys can hear it, but I will pause this while I do that and be back shortly. Alrighty, here's Ethel outside. Get a little better view out here without the